Welcome back. So, what I'm about to talk about, I don't feel like I fully have grasped the intention that God has behind it. But I think that's the whole point of why we're working through what I'm about to talk about. So, for the past week, we've been kind of working through faith in real time. So he's been placing me in situations where he's showing me either how other people's faith, how he's answering their prayers, which shows how much faith they have in him, or he's showing me how he's answering my prayers and just allowing him to do things in the way that he does things. So I was thinking about a friend that I used to have, and God allowed her to be in my life because he showed me through her how much he shows up with just believing and having faith in him. Like, when I tell you, this girl could go through she went through so many situations where I was just like, how did we get here? And it seemed like God just showed up every time and worked through it, or showed up and gave her exactly what she asked for, or just delivered her in different ways where it was just like, girl, I don't know. To me, it just showed me how much a genuine relationship with God, how it can be viewed by someone else as if someone's going through hard times. But for someone who knows God and knows how good he is, but to be able to see it in real time, it just brings that confirmation of who God really is through the lens of seeing it through somebody else. So it's like, you pray for these things and you want God to do these things for you, but when you're going through it, you don't realize how much God is doing these things. But when you see it on another person and you see them make it through it, it's like, dang, I know your story. I know what you've been through. So I know you saying that that's God helping you through every time. I know it is, because I've seen you go through it. I've seen you I don't want to even say at your lowest, but I've seen you in situations where it's just like, I don't see how you can make it through that. But I see God use you through the situation, and shows himself through you through the situation every time. And it's all because you believe in him. It really has nothing to do with you being good or a bad person. It's just the simple fact that you believe you're a child of God, and you know, genuinely in your heart, that you have a love and a reverence for God. So God is using that as what it is to show what he is intending for his children. It's the physical representation of his love for his children in real time. Hebrews 11 says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. When I tell you, I get around people, and sometimes I just feel like, I'm like, God, use me. use me in whatever way you want to use me right now. And usually in those ways, it comes down to like just helping somebody in need. And usually it shows up in a way where it's somebody asking for like food to eat. That's just usually how it goes. So that's why I feel like God has always placed on my heart trying to give back to like the homeless or the needy. But it just somehow always turns back to somebody like literally asking for food. And when we're in these situations, like these people ask for what they want. Like they don't hold back. And in my mind, I'm just like, from my perspective, I've always thought of the other person. Like I think of, what if they don't have enough to be able to give to me? So let me ask for what could, like looking out for their pockets. Like I'm gonna humble myself to get whatever is might not be exactly what I want, but it's fulfilling whatever I need at the moment because I'm just grateful that somebody's helping me. But God places me in those situations and these people ask for what they want. And to somebody else, it could be like, those people are taking advantage of the situation and not being considerate and just, the best wording for it is taking advantage of the situation. But God had to put a perspective in me to understand that just because in my mind I feel like these people might not be responding in a humble or a grateful way, it's like if you think of it in a faith-like manner, it's like I prayed for this. God has opened the door or given me the space and opportunity to allow somebody to feel like being a blessing to me. Why not ask for exactly what I want? Because if this person is sent by God, they have exactly what I need because God has given them the resources or the ability to be able to give me exactly what I'm asking for. So it wasn't until I kept encountering people like this that I was taken out of a judgmental place of, dang, these people, they not even considerate of the next person, to thinking to a switch flipping in my thought process to look at their faith to know that God provides. Like they know that this is a God-sent moment. You in this moment is still a God-sent moment for you because you've asked God to be able to allow you to do these things. So regardless if you do have it at the moment or if you don't have it at the moment, the whole point is the faith behind the action. Like they have faith enough to ask and you have faith enough to go wherever God asked you to go and spend whatever the amount is despite whatever the situation is, because the whole purpose of it has nothing to do with the number. The whole point of it is the action behind the faith on both ends. So it's like, don't put a limit on yourself or the person's opportunity through the thought process or the lack of faith. So Matthew 6, verse 3 through 4 says, "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." How that ties into what I was just trying to explain. So you don't know God's thought process through the blessing. So because you did what he asked you to do, and allowing somebody to get exactly what they asked for is his way of showing them their faith being answered, or their prayers being answered through faith in the way that they asked. And it's you fulfilling whatever God has allowed you to be in any situation that you've asked, in the way that he allows you to be able to be in that situation through your faith or your prayers and how you've asked him to use you. And it allows him the room to move how he does, to be able to get the glory in the way that he desires it or deserves, or in the way that he is. Like, that's just who he is. So it allows him to be who he is and move through his vessels in the way that he does, to fulfill the purpose that he always has intended, to show how much he truly loves his children, how he's going to care for his children and take care and make sure that they have what they need. So I was literally in a situation where I was in like masculine energy, and I was just like not understanding how just masculine I was until I was out of that energy. And the thought process that came to mind when I was like getting through that was like, so many people don't allow God to be God. So when I came up out of that masculine energy and was able to get back to what felt normal for me, the thought process was like, the feminine energy is needed. Like, I'm not able to be nurturing or be able to express myself in ways in a not so defensive or protective thought process when I'm in that type of energy. Like, it changes how I show up. But when I transferred that energy and allow God to do what God does and allow him to be the masculine energy, or him to be the protector, the provider, or to be in that energy or thought process, that changed allowed me to soften, to be able to show up in the way that I needed to show up for how he's created me to be. Like, that imbalance placed me into a combative thought process, and it made everything around me in that type of energy, and it didn't feel normal. It didn't feel the way it should be. And it made me think of how there's so many men out here that are in that same type of energy, and to think that people have to feel like they need to lead that way all the time was just like, for me, when I was in the transitioning process, it was just like, God, this, you can see how this is showing up into the world in real time. Like, if people follow the order that God has intended, it shifts something. So if men are allowing God to be the head, even though it seems like they're in a feminine energy, it's not a feminine energy per se, but it's allowing God to be in that, the protective provider role, to be able to allow the men to be into whatever energy God created them to be able to do what they need to do, as far as being the type of people that God created them to be. Like, it's a disadvantage to everyone around you when you're not allowing natural, divine order or natural order to be what it it's created to be. And that's why God showed that structure. Like if you think about it in like the Trinity sense, like God showed himself first, then he showed Jesus, and then he allowed the Holy Spirit to be, he showed the Holy Spirit. And as I'm reading the Bible, I noticed that the same thing he was doing in the New Testament, he did in the Old Testament. So it's not like anything has changed. But if you allow things to represent itself in the order that he has shown it, it allows it to make sense for who he is and how his plan has always been what it's meant to be. So he showed himself as himself from the beginning so that people can believe that he is who he is. Then he physically showed himself as a person so that people that need that physical representation can understand who he is, to show that he still is who he is for those who need a different perspective or understanding for who he is. Then he allowed the Spirit to show up to confirm everything that he's already said, because it's still a living spirit that is showing who he is to complete the divine purpose of what his intention has always been from the beginning. So it's that same concept in everything that he does. It doesn't even, you don't even have to take it to like just a family aspect. It's all the way down to the whole faith aspect that I started off with this whole video about. Like, if I didn't allow God to be who he is and show up in the ways that he is, like, it wouldn't allow him to do what he intended from the beginning, to bless his children in the beginning. So it's like, take that restraint off of who you think God needs to be or how you think God needs to show up to be able to do what God is going to do or what he has intended to do from the beginning. Because if you place that restraint on him, he's not able to be who he is. Like, you're stopping that. You're stopping the process, or you're stopping the thought process, or you're stopping the blessing, basically, of what he intended in whatever the situation is. So as I'm reading these scriptures and people are getting like whatever blessing or miracle they've asked for, like, it kept pointing out how Jesus is telling them, your faith did it. Your faith has did this. Your faith, go in faith. People realizing that the healing or the blessing came at a time where they just believed and it took place. Like John 4:43 through 54. It's verse 50 specifically. It says, "Go," Jesus replied, "your son will live." The man took Jesus at his word and departed. To take Jesus at his word means you have faith in what he said. You believe that he was going to do whatever he said at that moment, even though you couldn't physically see it taking place at that time. But because you took him at his word, you believe that he was going to do whatever it is that you asked. And to get to the place where you're able to see the answered prayer is another aha moment that, like, it was faith that did it. It's like, yeah, Jesus could have did it, but he kept, even in those moments, telling people like, you guys won't believe until it's a sign or a miracle that shows you these things. But to be able to include you in it, it was you activating your faith in it that showed that even though he could do it, he still wanted to use you in the process to be able to transition your mind to a understanding of faith being the action in it. Like, your faith is allowing him to do what he does. That's when it changes from that prosperity gospel to allowing God to do what he does, because you're allowing the faith to act in it. It's a difference when it's somebody saying something using means of other means outside of God to make things be something that you've asked, compared to having faith that it is God and allowing God to do what he does. So I've been placed in quite a few situations lately where financially I feel like I've been taken from, and the flesh part of me wants to fight for what's mine to get it back. But God is trying to work something in me to allow him to work through the situation. So it's like I can go and try to go on my own and try to get all these things back. And I've noticed in that process, it costs to try to do those type of things. But if you allow God to work the situation, it allows him to work on those people that are in the situation to show up for them in whatever way he needs to, whether that is in correction or grace, to be able to show who he is to them in that situation, as well as allowing me to allow him to show who he is and how he provides through the situations. Even though for me, it's like, but God, not doing something feels like I am allowing it to happen. And that's a masculine energy. That's how men move. That's why in business, people say that you have to be in masculine energy to be able to succeed, because in those type of situations, you have to be in that type of mindset so that people don't take advantage of you. But again, we're not of this world. So God is trying to use these situations to show the difference between his children doing things in his way and his order compared to how the world is doing things. It's like, if I don't sit back and allow God to do it the way that he does and allow him to move the way that he does, it doesn't show that difference. It doesn't allow him to try to shift or change the environment in those types of ways. If we continue in mirroring what the world is doing, instead of allowing him to do things the way that he does things, to show how he wants to show up in those same areas or those same spaces in his way. So me wanting to get it back in the way that makes sense to me only mirrors the way that the world does things, and it doesn't allow God to move in the way that he does things, that is still going to place me into the spaces and build me into the person that he needs me to be for those spaces, to show up in the way that he intended for those spaces to be, and how he wants his children to show up in those spaces. So how I'm seeing it is like having a child that's angry at a situation. And it's like, your child is justified in whatever way that they're angry for this situation. But you're telling your child to just sit there and I don't want to say take it, but to sit in the feelings that they're having at that moment instead of releasing whatever they're feeling. And doing this is allowing your child to build endurance through situations instead of allowing emotions to take place and possibly alter their future in ways that could be a disadvantage to them, but trying to teach them through the process of basically like controlling their emotions in situations that are sometimes unfavorable. Like that child is justified in feeling how they feeling, and the way they want to react is justifiable. Like if they were to go in and let's say fight whoever has made them feel the way that they're feeling, they could be justified in that situation. But you as the parent telling that child to sit there in that emotion and to let that emotion work through to logic to be able to handle the situation in a logical way instead of an emotional way helps that child develop in a way for long term, instead of allowing them to fly off with emotions and possibly, set their future up for failure. It allows them to build that mental endurance to respond logically instead of emotionally. So it's like, even though you feel like the child in that situation and you want to respond in those childlike ways, you have to remember that we have a Father above us that is still character developing us to be how he needs us to be in the way that he wants us to be. So when we respond in ways that he's character developed us to be, he can get that glory of, yeah, that's my child. I raised my child like that. Yeah, that's how I would want my child to respond. Like, yeah, you did the right thing in this situation, and now I get to show how the way I raise my kids. So I say all of this to basically say, like, work that faith muscle in the way that God intended so that he can fully get that glory that he has intended from the beginning, while still using you in the process of the way that he intended originally to show who he is. And that's all I got for y'all for now. Until next time.